Hello and welcome to a new tutorial where I figured I'd go over the best way to get started on making avatars for VRChat. I include in the description a zip file that will have the newest version of Blender, Unity that you need for the current version of VRChat, as well as a couple other things that I'll go over in the tutorial to make this easy for you, such as XNALara Plugin. Keep in mind that the README inside there will contain links to things that I cannot include in the zip, such as the VRChat SDK, which you'll always want to get the newest one. You have to get that by logging into the VRChat website and downloading it there. And the other thing would be I have a MMD I'm going to use that is allowed to be imported into VRChat from Nico Video, and I provided a link to that as well. The tutorial will now begin under the assumption that you have installed both Blender and Unity from the zip file and or from the source location. All right, so I'm gonna remove these, and what you see here is the brand new Blender install I have, and you'll notice there's a cube, lamp, and camera, and a timeline down here. We're gonna want to clean this whole scene up, and then I'll teach you how to install the plugins that come in the zip file. So if you just right click on these, you can delete them by hitting the delete key on your keyboard, or just clicking on delete in the menu. Down here you'll want to grab this little arrow in the bottom left of this window and drag down so that you see an arrow right here, and that will get rid of the timeline. The next thing you'll want to do is hit this little plus here to get this menu open here, and you can lower clip down to 0.001 is what I would recommend. And this, go up to File, and then we can save it so every time you open Blender, it will always be a clean scene, and so you don't have to delete them every single time. So you'll click that, and then click on Save Start File. I already have one, so I'm going to load that now. All right. Now that you've created the startup file, the next step is to install XNALara Plugin as well as the other plugins required to continue. So you'll want to go to File and use your preferences. Here you'll see this menu where you can save your settings and toggle on a lot of different tools that Blender comes with. To install the ones that are in the download package that do not come with Blender, you'll want to hit Install Add-on from File. Now this will bring up a file navigator, and you can locate the zip file that I provided or where you've downloaded them yourself, and just locate the zip files. The quickest way is to just have the folder open on your other monitor or in the background and copy and paste the file path, and you can just copy it in here, hit enter, and it'll go straight there. So now I'm going to click on XNALara Blender Plugin. I would normally hit Install Add-on at this point, but I already have it installed. So now I'm just going to X out of that, or actually I'm going to hit cancel so I can go back. And once you install it, you'll notice up comes a grayed out option for XNALara Plugin. You'll want to check that, and once it's checked, you'll want to then hit Save User Settings. There is another thing you can do, is you can also find and change the different versions here, and always check for updates in the same area. So now we're going to also install the other two add-ons. I uninstalled XNALara to give it as an example. I'll install that as well. Check that. Save user settings, and then you also want to install the material combiner, which allows us to atlas using XNALara Plugin. I already have that installed, so I'm now going to just locate that here. And that is now enabled as well. Save user settings, refresh, X out of here, and I'm now going to restart Blender just to make sure everything is installed, but it is looking like XNALara and everything is installed. Now that we've restarted Blender after installing the plugins, you'll notice on the left side there's a couple more options. So you'll have MMD, XNALara, XPS, and Material Combiner if those are the ones you chose to install. So to continue, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the XNALara tab, and prepare our start file again now that we have new things installed. So we're going to go to model options and drop that down, and you'll also want to bring down model options. I'm going to save it here to keep my options like that. All right, and now once you save the startup file, every time you start Blender with a new project, it will always be ready for you to start. So now we're going to bring in the MMD that I am using as an example, and you can follow along and do the same exact model because it is a publicly available model. I'm going to show you here momentarily. So this is Nico Video. They have a lot of models here now because in Japan it's becoming a lot more popular for VRChat. So they do have models that, as you'll see here, it is okay to use this model in VRChat. And to continue, if you click on VRChat here as a tag, you'll notice there's at least 3 pages right now of models that are freely available to be used in VRChat without any consequence. Like a lot of people are bringing in models from DeviantArt, and they're not exactly asking for permission, but these users here have already provided the permission in the upload itself. Some of them, such as this one, actually come with the VRChat Unity package already, and you can skip Blender entirely and go straight to Unity with it. All right, so now that I'm going to unzip and everything, the file, and then once I do that, I will hit import and go to the folder where I unzipped it. I'm going to go to look for the PMD, but this one does come with the FBX as well. So if you go to the PMD and hit import any model, it will bring in the model, and you'll see it really tiny down here. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in. I will enable screencast here so you can kind of follow along with the button clicks. You'll notice now that you've imported a model, you now can export a model, import another model, or you can also fix the model. So we're going to hit the wrench beside fix model here, and then we're going to check the apply full body fix. I tend to apply a full body fix to all my models because I use full body all the time, and most users these days do use it or eventually will get it. So you might want to have all your avatars support it so that one day when you get full body, all your old avatars still work great in it. So once those are checked, I'm going to hit fix model, and you'll notice it's going to reposition some bones, and it's going to rename bones and also show the texture. Now, basically, it just did everything that VRChat is going to need to find when you bring it into Unity, such as the bones are going to now be named correctly. So this is left arm, for example, left elbow, and you'll notice that that's a naming convention that all models will use in Unity. The next step would be you click on Translate All here, and it'll translate the names of every mesh and material. So these materials before were Asian characters representing the word material in this case, and it translated that to material here. And since we're in here, we're going to look at these materials. By clicking on this square, it'll show the full picture instead of it on a sphere. And this way you can kind of identify which ones are the skin, which ones are the outfits, which one's the hair, and everything like that. You can choose to rename these here so that when you pull them into Unity, you can better understand which material is which, or you can do that once you're in Unity. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to hit separate materials. What this will do is it'll actually separate the body into several meshes instead of just one. That way you can actually select, I'm going to hide the bones by hitting the little eye. You can actually select the hair individually, as you see here, and the clothing, etc., as it's its own model. This allows you to decimate each part if the tries are above 70K, which is the max recommended for VRChat avatars. This model actually comes in under that number, most likely because the model itself was made with VRChat in mind. A quick example of decimation, however, would be if I were to click on this hair, I can go to the wrench here, add modifier, add decimation. You'll want to move it to the top by hitting this up arrow. And then you can change the ratio of the compression by lowering this. What this will do is it'll actually lower the amount of polygons in the hair. I'm going to lower that just a tad, not much. And then I'm going to hit join mesh over here, hitting all. This will automatically apply the decimation to the hair that I added the modifier to, and merge everything together and delete the appropriate blend shapes. You do not want to decimate the face or delete the blend shapes there, because then you will have to recreate the blinking and mouth movements yourself. Now that I've decimated the model down below 70, which of course it already was, but I showed you an example of decimation, and you can do that with every part, or follow my decimation tutorial, which is much more in depth. The next step is what you're going to want to do is go into the eye tracking tab here on the left. You'll notice that after I translated, it automatically discovers where the left eye and the right eye are, as well as a wink animation. However, that is only wink for the left eye. It didn't find the wink for the right eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the blink left and locate blink here. So what'll happen is if it cannot find a wink for both eyes, it's best to just use a blink animation on just one eye. That way when it blinks, it'll close both eyes using just the left blink. Then you're going to want to hit create eye tracking, and usually by default without any issues, you can then, and I recommend saving before you hit start eye tracking, just because sometimes Cat's plugin does crash when you hit it. We're just going to name this example. I recommend saving because sometimes when you hit start eye tracking, it'll crash. Now what you do once you hit start eye tracking is you can test the eye tracking and movement by hitting these sliders and hitting reset rotation to put it back. You can also test the blink by hitting test here and then hitting reset shapes to go back. Now I'm going to exit eye tracking, go to the Viseme tab. Now what the Visemes will do is this will select the ah sound, the o sound, and the ch sound, because those are the most important and prominent of your vocabulary. And then the rest will be generated from those automatically using the script within Cats. It'll basically kind of be like, okay, so the mouth's closed here and the mouth's open here. It needs to be halfway, so it'll kind of generate what's needed. So now we're going to hit Create Visemes. And once it's done thinking, you'll notice over here, if I click on Body, and I go to the upside down triangle tab with the dots, this is where you're going to see the vertex groups and the blend shapes. So over here, you'll notice that VRC, which stands for VRChat, has now been generated for all the different blink types that VRChat will look for on every model. And this is the exact order that they have to be in, so Cats also did that for you. And you'll also notice all the other blend shapes that come with the model. Now that we've generated the Visemes and we've checked the blend shapes and we see that everything is there, you can even change the value and test that they work. You'll want to go to Optimization. Now, you could go to bone parenting and parent the bones and the hair and everything together. However, I do not recommend doing that anymore because that actually just adds more bones to the model, which it does actually consider bone count in the rating system now. So I would not recommend doing that. But you can do that to create a root bone, which will allow you to place a dynamic bone on just that in Unity, simplifying the adding of dynamic bones, and you won't have to do exclusions, which I'll show you in another tutorial. So now that we've opened the Optimization tab, we can see that there's 3 buttons here: Standardized Textures, one Material Texture, and Combine Same Materials. Now, if you go to the materials here, you'll notice that under the checkerboard tab, when I'm on this one, it only has the face selected. We can check through a couple more, and you'll notice this one has a tune map on it. Now, that tune map is not needed at all by Blender and or Unity. So we're going to go over here and hit this little X beside one material texture, and it'll remove all those unneeded extras that are attached to each material. Now, this is where the material combiner we added earlier comes in. So we go to the material combiner tab over here, and it'll have a list of all the materials right here. You're going to want to uncheck Apply Diffuse on the material image unless it's a solid color. It looks like all these are textures, so I'm going to uncheck this on every single one of these. You can also lower this, make this absolute white if you need to, if you will bake it in when atlasing. All right, then we're going to hit continue. Now, after we've hit continue, this is where we're going to hit deselect all to uncheck everything. We're also going to uncheck for now compress combined image. You can compress them if you want. Basically, it'll save the images out as a more compressed type of PNG, which will have some dithering in it, which will be slightly noticeable if you get really close to an avatar. We're going to change quadratic to automatic. So when it generates the atlas, it doesn't have a bunch of empty space. So if you remember earlier, I had you hit the square on all these so you can actually see the full texture. So what we're going to, the reason we did that for is because I'm going to now identify what I'm going to merge. So I'm actually going to merge all the skin into a single texture. So you'll notice that material 10 and 7 are the skin. So we're then going to combine that. It'll automatically file path to where your model was opened from, and then you'll want to hit Create Atlas. So you'll notice that if I go over here, it now created a PNG file that has both those textures in it. And now it's minimized the amount of materials. So you don't have to have as many materials, which lowers the amount of draw calls and will improve the performance of your avatar for yourself and everyone. I'm going to go ahead and leave the hair as its own single material so I can apply a material just for that. And I'm going to then select every single one that has to do with clothing. So those are the two for clothing. And then I'm going to hit combine for that as well. And lastly, it looks like I'm going to, this has blush and this has the eyes. They both have transparency, so I'm going to select everything that has the transparencies and combine that into one last atlas. This will bring the model down to 4 materials, which will have it so you can actually have your avatars excellent if you bring your tries down to a reasonable number. Now that you've atlased everything, you're already ready to export this. So I'm going to save this as an atlased version. I do recommend saving before you atlas and then another version when you atlas so that in case you atlased incorrectly or there's any issues, you can revert. So now I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to the cats tab. You can hit export model and this will export it as an FBX with settings automatically selected so that there's no issues. It'll basically uncheck add leaf bones, which add extra bones in Unity. I'm going to now hit export and save again. And now I'm going to move over to Unity. Once you install Unity, you're going to want to log in and then create a new project. And once you create a new project, it'll start and look just like this. Currently, you'll notice when I go to the project tab, the assets are right now empty. So I'm going to go and download the SDK right now from the VRChat website. It'll look something like this. And then you click download SDK. Now that you've downloaded the SDK, you'll see that the SDK, as well as the other Unity files that came in the package I have in the description below, have the icon. And that means that if you double click it, it'll automatically open up and decompress in the Unity that you have open on your screen. So I'm going to skip ahead till the part where it's done decompressing. All right, now once it's done decompressing, you'll now see a list of all the things it wants to install. We want everything checked, and that'll happen by default. So we're going to hit import, and now it's going to import everything from that file into Unity, and this is how you install the SDK. After that is done installing, we're going to want to do the same thing with the other Unity packages that you see in here. What these include is the VisemeFix, and what that'll do is when you pull in an avatar, you can just hit Find Visemes, and it'll automatically fill in every single Viseme that was generated in the CATS plugin. The VisemeFix was made by the same person, Hotox, who made the CATS plugin, which is why it works so well. And then the shader we're going to use for the example is Noenoe Overlay Shader instead of Cube Paradox, which is a more common one that's been used for a long time. I've skipped ahead and finished installing all the Unity packages included within the zip document in the description. So once your project looks like this, you'll see the shader, the plugins, as well as the VisemeFix and the SDK. So now at the top of your Unity, you're going to have a VRChat SDK tab. In here, if you click Settings, a window will pop up, and it'll be called VRChat Settings, and you can drag this into any part of the window you want. I usually add it over here, and I'm going to log in now using the same password and username as VRChat uses to log in. You'll see that once you hit known user or higher, you will be allowed to publish worlds and avatars. If you do not have that access and you're just a visitor, it will not show anything until you reach that by playing some and also adding friends and visiting lots of worlds, and that'll up your ranking. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that tab again for VRChat. I'm going to do Show Build Control Panel. This is going to be used to actually upload the avatar, but as of right now, I do not have one in my project. So I'm going to go back to the Project tab. I'm going to right-click on Assets and create a new folder. I'm going to name this folder Avatars. I would recommend organizing your folders because at first, you'll add one or two models, but eventually you'll end up with projects that have hundreds of models like mine, and you'll want to organize this correctly. So now I'm going to name this Tutorial, and this is going to be the name of the first avatar I upload using this project. And in there, I'd recommend adding a Textures folder. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over the folder that I put the combined images into from the Atlas, and I'm going to drag those into Unity. Keep in mind, some people will have an issue doing this if their Computer Explorer is not set to Administrator. You can Google how to do this, or basically close the Explorer exe in your task manager and then relaunch it using the... Let's actually show you now. When you open the task manager using Control-Delete or right-clicking, you can go in and hit File and Run New Task and do Explorer. And when you do that, check Administrative Privileges. And this will start your Explorer in that, allowing you to drag files in if it does not work. So now that I've dragged those textures in, there was at least one other texture, which was the hair, that I did not atlas, so I got to grab that from here. So now that all four textures are in there, I'm going to now drag in the example atlas.fbx file into Unity as well. It'll take a little bit, and then you'll notice it's down here with a little bit of a preview of it. Now you want to go to the Inspector tab in the top right, go to Rig, and hit Humanoid. Hit Apply. And what this is going to do is it's going to enter where you set up the rig of the avatar. Now, this avatar, after I hit Configure, you're going to notice there's an error. Now, this error is there because I'm using the full body fix, and that can be ignored. Next, I'm going to look through here, and I do not see any toes rigged. So that's good, because you do not want toes rigged because it'll cause your avatar to be on its tiptoes a lot. Next, we check the head tab, and most likely the jaw will always automatically grab hair bones or any other bones inside the head. You always want to unrig that, or else your jaw will flap and cause issues in the game, or whatever bone is attached to that, like your hair will flap instead of your visemes talking. After we do that, and there seems to be no other issues, I'm going to hit done and apply. Once that's done applying, we're going to go to the Materials tab now, and then we're going to hit Use External Materials Legacy and apply that. What this will do is it'll move all those materials outside of the model and put them in a Materials folder in here, allowing us to change the shader. So now I'm going to go into Materials folder, highlight all three of them by clicking the first one, holding Shift, and clicking the last one. Once you highlight all of them, you'll see over in the top right in the inspector, you can click on this drop down for whatever shader you want, and you'll notice Noenoe is in there, which is one of the ones we installed earlier. I usually click on outline. What this will do is it'll allow back facing to be on because of the way outlines are applied to shaders. Next, I'm going to drag this model into the scene, just like you just saw. And then I'm going to click on it, hit F to zoom in, which is a good way of focusing on a target. I'm going to go back to materials, and I'm going to see she already looks pretty good, but I'm going to change some settings here real quick. I'm going to highlight all of these. And then I'm going to select the ramp, and what this will allow me to do is type in the word ramp here, and you'll see there's 4 different options. I tab through them and it changes the way shadows are applied. I personally like using the tune ramp, and I usually use around 3.2, or I mean 0.2 or 3.2. Good old dyslexia. Next, I sometimes apply static billboard lighting. What this will do is it'll have the lighting shadow always applied in the same way. So I'll do 3, 1, and you'll see that that's how the shadow will always be on the target. I'm going to move around the directional light here, so you can kind of get a better idea of how this works. If you change this to global up here, by the way, you can change it on the global axis instead of its local axis. So now this is how the light is landing on the avatar. And you can adjust this however you want. You don't have to apply the static lighting, but keep in mind this is a way of changing how the shadows will fall on the target. Next, we're going to set the intensity to 9 and the saturation to a good old 0.86. She's looking pretty good already. However, if you go to this tab here, you'll notice that I still cannot upload her. That's because we're going to add a VRC Descriptor by clicking on her main game object, adding component, typing VRC in, and going to the Avatar Descriptor. If you remember, I added a VisemeFix, and this is where you hit auto detect, and it'll automatically grab the body mesh as well as every single mouth viseme. Because this avatar is female, we're also going to click female here. Now that we have the default animation set as well as the viseme selected, we're going to use Pumpkin's tool to speed up another process. So we're going to click on Tools, Pumpkin, and then we're going to go to Avatar Tools. This will open yet another tab, which I'll drag down here. And this will allow us to grab the avatar that we want to edit. I'm going to drag this down onto the empty game object, and this you'll see these all will activate. Now, if you ever accidentally add an animation to your avatar and break its pose, you can reset the pose. You can reset the blend shapes all down to 0 if you've changed some faces. But we're going to do this right now. We're going to hit Edit Viewpoint, and it automatically identifies where the eye bones are on the avatar and kind of approximates where the viewport should be. Then we're going to move this arrow inward to get the viewport right around the bridge of the nose. It seems to be a tiny bit high because of her eye size, and we're going to move that down, and then we're going to hit Apply. This will automatically adjust the viewport over here. Now, I can manually adjust this as you see here, but using that tool will definitely speed up the process. Now that we have the viewport set as well, we technically can upload this avatar as is. Now, at this stage is when you can do some fancy stuff such as add dynamic bones, etc. In this current project, I do not have dynamic bones installed, so I'm just going to upload the avatar as is. However, there is one more thing we can do to lower the size of the avatar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change the max size of the textures to the max it can be. It won't actually stretch it to that size, but it'll allow the avatar's texture to be as large as it actually is, which will prevent them from being blurry. So then I'm going to use crunch compression. This is a personal choice. You do not have to do this step at all. I then up that compressor quality under normal quality to 100, and then I also uncheck MIP maps, and then I hit apply. So what this is going to do is it's going to compress all these shaders, or all these textures I should say, and if you click on just one down here, you're going to see that this file is only 263 kilobytes now. If I remove crunch compression, it'll probably jump up to at least, 2 megs. And you won't really see much quality loss. So I'm going to do that again, and you'll notice when you look here, the quality is pretty much the same. Yep, no quality loss. However, it's going to make the avatar much smaller. Please note that in the future, if they update the version of VRChat again, you'll have to re-upload your avatar because the crunch compression library will be different. To finalize this, we're going to hit VRChat tab from before, which you can also bring up by hitting the SDK and doing show build controls. You'll notice that this avatar is rated as good. And if you want to check how many dynamic bones there are, you can also hit search for dynamic bones when you have it in the Pumpkin tool. But as of right now, we do not have any at all, so it won't find any. We're going to hit publish and build. I have to save the project because it's a brand new project. I'm going to save the scene. And then it'll change the game tab here into an upload window after building the asset. Now that this window is popped up, you can actually ignore the content warning checkboxes because to my knowledge, they are not actually used in VRChat at all. Not to mention that any of these that are checked aren't actually allowed in VRChat anyway. What you could do to change the way the thumbnail is you can click on the VRC camera over here and change this, these values to zoom in some. So we're going to zoom in some on her face. And then we're going to hit this check mark here to agree to the rules. And we're going to also name this tutorial, which is going to be the name. You don't necessarily need to put in a description, but you can credit the creator of the model and everything. Lastly, we're going to check public so that anyone can clone this off of me and I can use it in pedestals in my world. So I'm going to hit upload, and it's going to go up to my account here. I'm going to skip ahead till when it's done, and then I'm going to show you the last part of managing content and show you the model in game. Alright, the avatar is finished uploading, and at the end you'll just notice a window saying success, and you hit OK. Now that I've uploaded an avatar, and this would be your first avatar most likely, you hit manage content and you'll see a list of every avatar you have. Of course, my list is much larger, but in here you're going to see public IDs, the ability to delete, and manage the things that you've already uploaded. Now before I hop over to VRChat to show you it functioning, you can also do some other things with the shaders to make yourself a little bit more unique. For this hair, for example, you can colorize the hair to be whatever you want, but it'll colorize the entire thing. There are other more advanced shaders out there that will let you do some more fancy things, such as emit light, like so, and just knock yourself out. Just be careful on adding objects to the avatar and increasing mesh count for optimization purposes. Now to finalize this tutorial, I'm currently in game to show you that the upload succeeded, and the blinking is working, the eye tracking is working because I'm always looking at myself, and the mouth is matching the way I speak because of the Visemes that we generated. As you see that there's no physics because we didn't add dynamic bones. That'll be a tutorial in the future, as well as custom animations and maybe adding chairs to avatars. There's a ton of options. Please feel free to add me on Twitch as well as follow me on YouTube. That will be the best way to ask me questions if you get stuck, as well as follow more tutorials I create in the future. Thanks for watching.